work for them, maybe it'll work for us. So that's the end of my talk. No, it wasn't.
You got more? Go ahead.
I got one more slide. I forgot to say. So we built so many selectors. I have built more selectors than anyone. Now I don't know if that's a good thing. It's probably a very bad thing. But I've made a lot of mistakes. So we built all Java selectors. We built selectors that plug in as a Firefox plugin, just as a thin client. We built Adobe Air-based selectors. We built the new Azigo Lite selector based on the Qt platform. And every one of them has some good and some bad. And as a result, we actually have 3 code bases running at the moment. We have the original Air one, which has full functionality, but it's kind of has its problems. Then we have the Azigo Lite. This is the thing you have. It's really good. It installs, it's fast, it's stripped down, but it doesn't have the full information card stuff. That was just an experiment to see if we could, after all these years, actually build and it's a really snappy, good selector. So we just started over and built a really simple one. So that's the Azigo Lite. And what we've been working on for a long time is sort of the 3.0. And what I meant by convergence is when we get that stupid 3.0 thing finished, we will end of life every other thing we've done. We think we've figured out how to make a selector. So that would be good, right? They're hard to make, or hard for us.
Are you making predictions about when you'll release it?
Well, it says here 3.0 in end of Q1. I mean, when a developer says Q1, they mean March
Q3.
49.
Yeah.
Q3 is the next year.
Yeah, well, we have a big team working on it. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of interest in it. So the hope that eventually this Azigo Lite will upgrade into 3.0, and our Air thing will upgrade into 3.0, and there will only be 3.0. And the 3.0, we have prototypes also on Android and iPhone, and we've done. It's got the other problem with selectors. It's just got to run everywhere, every browser. We still struggle with how we can make this work on Safari because Apple's legendarily closed architecture stuff is a problem. But we have to solve it, and we're gradually making progress. So that now is the end.
Hang on. Speak into the microphone.
Oh, right.
Come on, Burton, here's your chance.
Okay, I actually have 2 questions. The first is you talked about how you're going to package OpenID and those other factors into the identity within within an information card, correct? And
There are actually 2 schools. So you heard the question.
Well, let me finish that. How do you confirm that is the true? My real question is, how do you confirm that is the true identity of the individual with just that information? Will there be other factors that go into place, like friend of a friend? I know PayPal. We talked about this a little last night. I know PayPal's working on more identity theft type factors that they have entire teams that go out and verify true identity of individuals. What types of things are going to go into this to actually truly identify an individual as an individual, so you know that is the person that is claiming to be that person?
Okay, so that is a hard problem. Before I answer that, I don't like it. I'll answer some easy ones. So the thing that's cool about information cards is that we've been able to solve every other problem that's related to your problem. And by solving all the rest, what all that remains is the problem you mentioned. Authenticating the human being to the card or to the selector. That's a tough one. And there's no easy answers. In the security business, is always this trade-off of convenience and security, right? But at least what we've got is an infrastructure where we've got strong mutual authentication of the relying party. Unlike today's phishing nightmare, it's just trivial, right? To trick with social tricks, to trick people out of the shared secret that you have and now you have them. So the last part is authenticating the person. Now the good news is, this is a bias, I'm terribly biased. When you've got a trusted client, you now reduce the problem to authenticating the user to the client, not the user to all the relying parties, and not even the user to all of the issuing parties. So you make it so that it's possible that you get darn close to the concept of one master password to rule them all, and or SMS message to your phone, and or biometric fingerprint, or choose your poison. But I think the promise is that we can't solve that problem. There's no silver bullet, but we can make it so that for the user, they only have one authentication experience, which escalates based on the risk profile of the transaction you're involved in. Right? You always want the lowest amount of security for the transaction at hand, rather than today, where you're talking about different credentials at different sites, or even with CardSpace, where you're talking about different credentials for each issuer of the card. So it's, Microsoft could argue they made it 10 times better. From our experience, end users want it solved all the way down to the master, and maybe somebody who has a phone and knows a PIN number and has a phone. For many transactions, that would be a very strong way to authenticate that person. You have to have swiped their phone and somehow got their PIN or something. So I feel that we're headed in an architecturally in a direction where we'll have the best possible answer to identifying the human. But the actual technologies to authenticate the person, there are hundreds of them out there. It's an area of innovation, from biometrics of various kinds. And we really try to look at a framework to plug them into rather than saying we have found the answer to authentication. If that is a long-winded
Yeah,
torture
very
answer.
interesting. It's actually turning into 3 questions. I hope I'm not taking too much time.
No, I guess I was.
Just the next question. Part of a person's identity, I think, includes their social graph and who their friends are as well as who they are. I think who their friends see them to be also identifies that individual. Do you have plans to integrate the social graph into this?
So I think, sorry, I didn't. You mentioned that earlier. I missed. That's actually a very, very interesting point. As long as the other issues, the easier issues, have been resolved, so that social graph can't be gamed, which it can today. Anything on the internet is incredibly insecure, right? So at least once we secure that, then social graphs are a very interesting authentication technology because the attack vectors are quite difficult, right? You have to coerce, especially like social graph-based authentication where there's a random factor inserted. So the attacker doesn't even know which of your friends is going to have to vouch for you. So I think it's very promising, but it's one of these things. It's like people say, reputation, it's the most important thing and it will solve all things. Well, except for without the underpinnings, a civil attack to game a person's reputation is so easily done.
It has self-identity.
Yeah, so this is why when we started, a whole bunch of us think that we need a foundational architectural layer that gives us secure ability to move verified attributes around that are not repudiatable, upon which we can do cool things like you're talking about, and reputation. I think reputation's getting nowhere until we solve the underlying issues. If I can game, the generation of my good reputation, talk to eBay about that, right?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The other concern, this is my last question, I promise. The other concern I have is this is one company, Azigo, that is managing some of this. Are there any intentions to create a foundation?
Sorry, if I left. Okay, that is completely not true. So
Okay,
usually I
wanted to try
never
to
talk about.
understand
I seldom talk about Azigo usually. So there's a bunch of things. So like Firewall. Oh, I'm not online, right? Oh.
I'm done asking questions.
Okay,
that's
well,
all I got.
You can get up on this.
Anyway, so first of all, there's in the information card space, there's the information card foundation, just like in the OpenID space, so absolutely. And this guy, Drummond here, he's a full-time employee of that foundation to try. Lately, what I was hinting at is you're seeing a lot of interest in cooperation and a lot less interest in and anyone who wants to invent a new identity protocol, they're going to be shot on site because that's it. OpenID was the last one. Okay, great. And we're interested in that. The other thing I want to say is that my little company, the reason I know Provo somewhat well is that we started an open source project called the Higgins Project. It's higgins-project.org. And that's where most of this is. I'm a great believer. Well, first of all, I believe small startups couldn't do this if they wanted to. It's way too hard. You can't have a startup can't solve problems at an infrastructural layer, at least from a cold start. And so we've decided to build an open source reference implementation of almost everything we're talking about here. We do have a little special sauce, in order to keep our investors from trolling jumping out the windows, I say, well, you know, it may be 95% Higgins code, but there's this special sauce on top.